If you want to be able to play something like this, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the first part of this series on foot technique on the drum set. I'm going to give you all the basics here for playing the kick drum, the hi-hat and also the double pedal. I will explain to you exactly how the techniques work, so that you know exactly what is happening there, show you specific exercises, also help you to adjust the pedals, and there is even more bonus material so that at the end of the series you are independent learners and can improve your foot technique even further on your own. So this is a real basic course, free of charge for you. But I put a lot of time and money into this, so please be honest, and at the end of each video think about what it was worth to you. In the description you will find a link where you can throw something into my thank you box via PayPal. Or you support me long term on Patreon, get even more bonus material, personal gifts and personal lessons and workshops. You can also find the link to that below. And please remember that I don't mean the others, but you. For such an online course you will usually pay $150 or more, so just giving $1 per video is more than fair and still a bargain. At the end of this series there is a question and answer video. So if your most pressing questions aren't answered here, let me know in the comments and I'll respond. And now let's get started. We'll first take care of the basic movement, that is, how we move our feet in the first place in order to produce sounds as efficiently as possible. What I'm going to show you now applies to both feet in general, the bass drum and the hi-hat. The subtle differences in the instruments will then become clear in the course of this series. I show it to you mostly on the bass drum with this practice pad because it's just the best way to show. And there are 2 whole videos in this series just for the hi-hat. So feel free to do the following exercises with both feet, regardless of which way you play or whether you play the double bass drum. Feel free to play along and pause the video whenever you need to. That's what I like the best, when you're active and don't just watch this series and let it wash over you, but participate right away. By the way, you should also put the snare drum aside from time to time, because the feet don't learn quite as fast as the hands, because they're out of sight. So we get less feedback through our eyes. So make sure that you can see them well to learn even more effectively. And it is best if you even have a mirror ready so you can see yourself from the side. And then you should look at your knee and what it's doing, because later, if you don't see your feet anymore, that's the best indicator of what your feet are playing. First, let's look at the 2 basic principles of how we operate the pedal. Heel down, meaning the heel stays put and we just play from the ankle, and heel up, where we activate the whole leg. With both variants you have the option of pressing the beater into the head and holding it there until the next stroke, or let it jump back directly. By the way, this is not a trivial distinction as many might think, but influences very much how you play and how you sound, so we address it right from the beginning. Because I've had a few students who came to me with problems in their foot technique, which stemmed from the fact that they had unconsciously gotten used to one of the 2 variants. But if you consciously keep an eye on it now, then you can control it and don't get used to anything that you have to untrain later. We will take a closer look at the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 options in a moment. I'll tell you more about pedal adjustment in one of the next videos. You can check the link to the whole playlist for that. But so that the exercises work right away, your pedal should be adjusted roughly in a middle range. The angle of the beater should be around 45 to 60 degrees to the head, no less than 30 or you won't be able to have much room to wind up for a stroke, and no more than 70 or the head of the beater will hit the back of your foot. The spring should be adjusted so that the beater vibrates gently if you tap it, but not that it jitters quickly, or that it tips over the dead center because there's no tension at all. I play a Darwin FTW pedal by ACD Unlimited from Austria. This is the longboard version, so it doesn't have a heel plate like most pedals. But it doesn't matter what kind of pedal you have as long as it works and isn't rusty. The techniques still work in principle in just the same way. Exactly what kind of pedal you have is just a personal preference mostly. First, we look at the heel down variant. This is the simplest technique as we only have one pivot here, which is the ankle. You simply place the entire sole of your foot in the middle of the pedal. When you are completely relaxed, the weight of your foot should bring the beater halfway to the head. So don't tense your shin muscles. If the mallet is already on the head, the angle is set too small, the spring is too loose, or you are sitting too close. Your legs should be roughly vertical. This is your starting position now, where the foot stays when it's not playing. To make a stroke, you just lift your toes a little bit and then strike down with a quick contraction of your calf muscle. The winding up movement is already part of the stroke. They merge into one another. A common mistake is to keep the toes lifted between strokes and then just punch the foot down. On the one hand, you generate background noise when your foot hits the pedals, and you waste energy. In addition, it's just unnecessarily exhausting. So only lift the tip of your foot as far as the pedal still follows you because of the spring tension, and then immediately start the downward motion. So you always keep contact with the foot plate, and between the strokes, your foot just stays relaxed. So don't slowly lower your foot like you're stepping on a gas pedal in a car. It's just a short burst, a short contraction, like you're tapping the beat to music. Another common mistake is pushing forward with too much force, like pushing yourself back in an office chair. It's not about strength though. Pushing harder doesn't make you louder. Instead, use the lever, that is, let the beater swing backwards and then give a short, quick impulse. If you push in, you waste energy and tense up your whole body. The heel down stroke really only comes from the calf. After the stroke, you immediately relax again and land in the starting position automatically. The foot never leaves the pedal, so you're always in control because you can feel where the foot plate is through the contact. Of course, they don't stick together 100%. It's a dynamic interface, but you should never lose touch with the pedal entirely. Try that a few times. Take your time, make single, easy strokes, and make sure that it is one continuous movement from swinging back to the downward stroke, and then you land in the starting position. Really take your time with this, so practice this for a few days until you can comfortably control the movement. You can also try to play some grooves with it. If the beater doesn't come back far enough after the hit, or your shin muscles cramp up, then you're probably sitting too close to the kick drum or too low. The angle between the lower leg and the foot should be a maximum of 90 degrees, ideally slightly larger. Otherwise, you limit the movement range. You can test this very easily. Put your foot flat on the floor and lift your toe as high as you can. Now, put your foot one length further in front of you and lift your toe again. Now place your foot a length behind you and do the same. You will notice how much more exhausting it is at the back and how much further you can get at the front. So if you play heel down, you should not sit too close to the drum set and also not too low. When you have a good feeling for this basic movement, then you play continuous strokes in the next step. The rebound helps us here. This means that the wind-up motion is now supported by the rebound of the beater from the head. If you're loose and relaxed and don't play very softly, the rebound will move your foot up, and from there you can make the next stroke. It's now like you're dribbling a ball. All you have to do is give some energy into it the first time. After that, you just have to keep it moving. Here's a tip on how you can practice this. Tip on your pedal and see how it swings. This is the natural oscillation of your pedal at the current setting. Just try to follow with your foot and keep the pedal swinging in this frequency. Then, if you put a bit of energy into the downward motion, you'll get steady strokes. At this rate, you need only a minimum of energy. Then, with a little more power, try to increase the speed and control it yourself. Use your metronome to find out how fast this natural pendulum motion is, and then try playing even beats a little faster. See how far you can get, but only as fast as it still sounds clean and you are relaxed, so that you don't cramp up and get used to something wrong. Also try playing slower. This is how you find out where the minimum tempo is, under which you have to make individual strokes again. This will give you a good feeling for your pedal and how your technique corresponds to it. Give yourself a few days or even weeks to master the heel down technique in this manner. Playing this way is very helpful when you want to make soft, steady hits on the kick drum, which is very common, especially in jazz, the so-called feathering of the bass drum. The advantage of the heel down technique in general is that you have good balance because the heel always stays firmly on the ground. It's the easiest technique because it only works two muscle groups, the front and back of your shin, and you're always in contact with the pedal, so you have good control. You can also use it to control soft strokes in particular and make ideal use of the pedal's natural pendulum motion. Your ankle corresponds directly to the hinge of the foot plate, so your foot movement is transferred one-to-one to the movement of the mallet. But that also limits us. The downside is that you can't play very loud with it without getting very tiring. You can play with it quite fast, but only up to a certain speed. After that we have to lift the heel or need special techniques, which I will show you later in this series. In contrast to the heel up technique, which we will look at in the next part, there are no advantages in pressing the beater into the head. You just waste energy. You wear out your equipment a bit more because you put more pressure on the head and also the pedal. And you can generate background noise. If the bass drum is tuned a little higher and more resonant, then you make a kind of press roll. So the beater jumps again very briefly and then you choke off the sound. So it just doesn't sound that nice. So get used to using the rebound, otherwise it will be harder for you to play faster later. Because as just shown, for that you have to dribble the beater anyway, meaning constantly let it jump back. If you get used to this looseness right away, you'll have more options later. There's nothing wrong with playing in the kick drum, into the head, but it just doesn't make much sense heel down, at least on the bass drum. If you play the hi-hat like this, you get a splash. That is, the cymbals resonate. For a short note, you actually have to press with a little more force. So try out the difference between the two pedals. They behave a little differently. If you are aware of this, you can adapt your technique depending on the situation. How exactly you play the hi-hat best, I'll tell you in detail in the coming videos. So much for the basics of the simplest technique with your feet. Try it out, get used to the movement on both pedals, play a little with the settings or your sitting position, and try to control this loose dribbling of the bass drum beater in different tempos. If you have problems somewhere and don't get any further, just send me a short video clip of how you play. Once I see that, I'll be able to help you a lot better. And if I can then show it in my question and answer video at the end, others can also benefit from it. So feel free to email me. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, take care and bye bye.